Good morning. So, were any of you in the band in high school? Can you raise your hand? I thought so. I know my people. How about physics? Anybody take physics in high school? Not as much enthusiasm there. Both? Band and physics? Well done. When I was in high school, I was an aspiring and passionate clarinet player, which you know if you've read my bio, and an absolutely indifferent physics student. I didn't yet see the relevance of physics to, frankly, much of anything, not yet, at least. And my grades and probably my college prospects showed that as well. But I was really fortunate that I had a wonderful teacher named Brother Peter Vukmanek. It was a Catholic school. Brother Peter helped me to understand and appreciate physics by showing me its application to music, which he somehow knew that I did care about. I guess the brothers compared notes after school? Who knew? Anyway, Brother Peter explained to me, for example, how concepts like wavelengths in physics related to concepts like octaves and harmony in music. I can still picture, it was a long time ago, I can still picture the book that he gave me. It was a simply beautiful and effective moment of teaching. And since that day, I've thought very differently about the relationship between art and science. America's higher education institutions have enhanced the lives of so many people over the years, both individuals and society as a whole. College graduates are more successful economically, they're healthier, they start more businesses, they vote and run for office more often. They pay more taxes but consume fewer government services. And the research conducted by universities has transformed the lives of millions of people over generations. And yet, higher education is under pressure from virtually all sides. How can it and how can we continue to flourish? Part of the challenge is that many people think about college as being only about one thing, getting a good job right after graduation. And hey, I get it. College can be expensive, and the people who are paying for it, whether it be parents or the students themselves or even the state government, want to make sure that they're getting a really good return on their investment. This has led to some interesting developments, like, for example, technology companies offering boot camps as a substitute for a college degree. 6 months, first job, boom, off you go. Among those students who do go to college, it's also led to a really strong focus on what has come to be known as STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, as well as business and healthcare. These are strong, popular, growing majors that have led to successful careers for many, many people over the years. They've produced the professional workforce for much of the country, and probably are responsible for a lot of the public support for higher education in the United States. But I believe that if we're going to successfully address the problems we're facing today and the problems we have in front of us tomorrow, we're going to have a broader concept of higher education, both at the level of the university as a whole, but also at the level of the individual student. The beauty and value of universities is in our intellectual diversity, in particular, the juxtaposition of science and technology, business and healthcare on the one side, with arts and humanities on the other. When we're at our best, universities bring together the technical and the aesthetic, the practical and the eternal in a sort of yin and yang relationship. No other institutions have this breadth, and thus this potential synergy and impact, the yin and yang relationship. It's in the house. We face many grave problems: addiction, global warming, plastics waste, polarized and poisonous social media, short-sighted business decisions that put the public at risk, and of course, war. And who can believe that there will not be more such problems on into the future? Albert Einstein, who was, as you know, a physicist, but also a musician, told us that we're not likely to be able to solve the problems that we're facing with the same kind of thinking we use to create those very problems. So how can we use the resources of universities to think differently about the problems that we're facing? The greater the complexity of the problems we face, the more unintended consequences we experience, and the greater the power of our technologies and our business tools, the more we need to use the arts and humanities to help us reshape our thinking about all of these problems. The humanities can help us to understand and appreciate the problems that we're facing, which shouldn't be surprising since they represent the distillation of literally thousands of years of human experience, learning, and wisdom. For example, we've learned that reading fiction can increase our level of empathy or our desire to help people solve problems that are not just our own problems. And this insight about reading fiction can be expanded to include other forms of art as well. So for example, there's a relatively new form of music that's based on the sound of glaciers melting, which can help us to appreciate the tremendous changes that the Earth is experiencing as it warms. As a recent New York Times article asked, if people can actually hear the sound of climate change through the once unknown songs of failing ice, can they be inspired to help prevent it? Our level of political polarization continues to be frightening, with red tribes and blue tribes talking past each other when not outright demonizing one another. Shakespeare took on this problem many centuries ago in the play Romeo and Juliet. I know, we think of Romeo and Juliet as a love story, and of course it is, but it's also a parable on the ravages of tribalism. As Prince Aeschylus says to end the play, "See what a scourge is laid upon your hate, that heaven finds means to kill your joys with love. And I, for winking at your discords too, have lost a brace of kinsmen. All are punished." We can only hope that young people who are exposed to this play can see the tremendous waste of lives, especially young lives, caused by tribalism, and try to find another, better path. Global poverty continues to be a heartbreaking problem, and the statistics can be mind-numbing. But can anyone who has read or seen Dickens' Christmas Carol with the Cratchit family or the homeless family with the unemployed father continue to be indifferent to the plight of the poor? Obviously, Scrooge couldn't, and I can't either. Similarly, Barbara Kingsolver's recent novel, Demon Copperhead, which is coincidentally a takeoff on the Dickens classic David Copperfield, and even more coincidentally, won a Pulitzer Prize just this week. The novel shows us how opioid addiction can destroy the life of just about anyone, and it makes it much harder to shrug it off as a problem of those people. Our understanding of war can be enhanced by experiencing Picasso's masterpiece, Guernica, or by listening to Mars, the Bringer of War, by Gustav Holst from the Planet Suite. Guernica was named for a town that was bombed by the Nazis in World War II as essentially target practice, trying to see how many civilians they could kill at once. The painting brings this horror to life and helps people who have no experience of war to have at least some small concept of what its costs may be. Even some of our problems with social media might have been avoided if their founders had had a better grounding in the humanities. Their contention that technology is apolitical is in itself profoundly ahistorical. So maybe dropping out of college to form a tech company is not without its costs, after all. The arts and humanities can also prepare young people for a future filled with uncertainty and change. The graduates on whom I will confer degrees next week will be in the workforce for roughly 40 years, until about 2063. Preparing for only a single career over that period of time seems increasingly risky. 40 years ago, no internet, no social media, no email. Telephones all still had cords, and if I remember correctly, some of them still had dials. What changes will the next 40 years bring? Even careers that have always been secure, like engineering and accounting, are likely to undergo profound changes. What will things like ChatGPT do to those kinds of careers? Under those circumstances, combining pragmatic career preparation with broader education that includes the humanities seems paradoxically less risky. As a former business school dean, I've often said that I would be reluctant to hire someone who has only studied business. I actually think they'd be dangerous. And that point is true now more than ever with the powerful tools that people have in their hands. Recently, I attended a conversation hour in the French department at the University of New Hampshire. And one of the best French speakers in the class was a young man who was majoring in civil engineering. So I asked him, why did you decide to double major in French? And he said, well, as a civil engineer, I could have the opportunity to work anywhere in the world. And I thought having a second language would help me to be successful. I think we're going to need more thinking like that. Unfortunately, education in many universities is becoming more specialized, not less. Humanities students are taking fewer science classes, science students are taking fewer humanities courses. If we're going to prepare our young people for an uncertain and changing world over many decades, we're going to have to find a way to reverse those trends. Finally, the arts and humanities can inspire us to take on really difficult challenge and to persevere in addressing them successfully in a way that more technical education simply cannot. Let's just take a couple of examples from American history. In 1804, Lewis and Clark decided to set out to map the Western territories at the request of President Thomas Jefferson, the Western territories that had been acquired in the Louisiana Purchase. This 2-year journey, 2 years, from Missouri to Oregon and back, required tremendous courage and tremendous resourcefulness. And those of you who study this in history know what I'm about to say next. They were tremendously aided by the guidance and the translation talents of a native woman named Sacagawea, incredibly inspiring. In 1848, a story that's less well known, an enslaved woman named Ellen Craft escaped from Georgia with her husband by posing as a white man. The level of courage and creativity required to pull this off is almost unimaginable. For example, she knew that she was going to have to sign certain documents on her way north, but she did not yet know how to read or to write. She did eventually learn how to do both. So she feigned an injury to her right hand, a ruse that actually worked, and she was successful. We can also find in literature many examples of taking on apparently impossible or intractable problems and persevering to be able to solve them. 2 examples, Alexandre Dumas's The Count of Monte Cristo or Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird really only scratch the surface of literature that can inspire us to persevere and think hard about how we can address our complex challenges and keep going until we win. In my family, we're inspired to take on our difficult challenges, and I should say including this one, by listening to Nessun Dorma. Nessun Dorma means let no one sleep, and it's an aria from the opera Turandot by Puccini. The plot is kind of complicated, but let's just say that Prince Caliph needs to solve several problems, accomplish several tasks in order to save his life and to marry the lovely Princess Turandot. Far-fetched? Okay, it's far-fetched, I'll give you that. But let's just listen to the final minute or so of the aria and remember that the word vincero in Italian means I will triumph. Several hundred years ago, Leonardo da Vinci created what may be the ultimate integration of art and science with his magisterial Vitruvian Man. If we're going to understand and appreciate the complex problems that we're facing, if we're going to prepare our young people for a changing and uncertain future, and if we're going to be inspired to keep digging and keep persevering to solve the problems that we face, we're going to need, like Da Vinci, like Einstein, and like Brother Peter, to bring together the technical and the aesthetic, the practical and the eternal, as they were meant to be. Thank you.